Welcome back to Biz Talk with Sherman. I'm your host, Sherman On, sharing your story in a show me world. Excited to be able to have our next guest on to be able to talk about IT in business. Welcome back to the show, Roland Parker.
Hey Sherman, great to be back on the show.
All right, now I know that this is a very hot topic, Macs versus PC, and it always seems that the Macs always have a difficult time in the business place.
They do, and predominantly most of the businesses tend to go for PCs versus Macs. And part of the things when you're starting to look at it, well, a Mac costs more and a PC costs less. What you've really got to look at is what are my long-term costs going to be. A Mac is going to cost more than a PC, but the Mac might last longer than the PC, but then the repair costs to the Mac are also going to cost more. At the end of the day, if you're looking at it from a cost point of view, you're looking at it from the completely wrong angle. What you really need to look at is what programs do I need to use? What is going to be the most efficient way to run my company? And you generally need to be Mac-centric or Windows-centric, even though you can combine the two. Sometimes it's not as seamless. So the starting point is finding out what programs am I going to be running, what programs do I need to run in the future, and are they better off on a Mac or on a PC? And that's where you make your decision. Don't just look at the cost of the item, because over a 5-year period, that's probably the least amount of money that you're going to spend.
Really insightful. So I know that my brother, he's an industrial designer, and so he's always saying Mac is the best way. So I think you bring up a really good point there, that depending on what you're actually doing, that should really be driving you Mac versus PC.
Absolutely. If you look at it, what programs am I going to be running? Not just now, but into the future. Find out what people in your industry are generally using. And if the bulk of those programs are more written for Windows-based programs versus Mac-based computers, then you're better off focusing on those, getting a Windows. But if you do have designers and those people that say, okay, this really is a Mac environment, you might find that your company then becomes this blended approach. I'm going to have designers working on these Macs, and I'm going to have my accountants and those other people working in a Windows environment. And as I say, sometimes blending them can be a little bit more tricky to make sure everything's seamless, and sometimes you have to have subscriptions for both Windows and Macs. But in most businesses, are you going to find there's more products out there for Windows-based products than Mac-based products?
So I have to imagine in today's world where you do have this blending, right, of creatives within a small to medium-sized business, and of course larger, that there's a lot of maybe some tools to be able to kind of get around in order to us seamlessly work together, whether you have a Mac or a PC.
Yes, and you can even load Windows onto a Mac if you're trying to join a domain and other things. But from a security point of view, people sometimes bring up this question, well, Macs are more secure than Windows and they can't get viruses. Well, actually, Macs do get viruses. They're just less viruses written for Macs than there are PCs, and there's more PCs out in the world. So sometimes there's this conception or misconception that Windows are more vulnerable. But both can get viruses. You've got to have protection for both, and you've got to have backups. So one of the disadvantages to the new Macs that we've seen is that their laptops have the hard drive, it's a NVMe solid state drive, is soldered onto the motherboard. Now the danger with that, if you don't have a correct backup, in a normal laptop you just replace your hard drive, or if your motherboard died, could be a liquid damage, could be a surge, you remove the hard drive, you transfer it to your new machine. While in the case of the new Macs, it's soldered onto the motherboard. If your motherboard goes down, even if your hard drive's fine, there's no way to get the data off it. So you've always got to think in terms of, okay, I've got this new device, how can I back it up and how can I make it secure?
Really interesting. So when it comes to those that are maybe in the PC world, what are some of those maybe benefits? You kind of mentioned a little bit on this hardware, but let's talk a little bit more about that for business owners and businesses.
So businesses, if you do have a server-based business, it is easier when you've got a Windows-based machines that can connect to the server, The server then can push out your antivirus and your different tools. We use Sentinel-1 and we use Threat Locker to lock those machines down. And they are developing some of those programs for Macs, but at the moment, from a security, reliability, and backup point of view, it is easier to do that from a Windows-based environment, especially for businesses. Now, homes, it's a little bit different, but if you're running a business and you've got a lot of computers and you've got a server, it is easier to have them all Windows-based, and you can actually have your security pushed up from the server and secure everything a lot better than you would if you have that blended environment.
Now, you mentioned a little bit about how there's a lot more like malware or kind of written for PCs because they are more dominant, used throughout the world. I got to imagine then on the plus side, though, there's probably a lot of more supportive apps for business written for the Windows PC models.
There are. So like the main tools that we use, your Sentinel-1, which comes with endpoint detection and remediation, Threat Locker, which gives you the ability to lock the machine down, prevent people from copying things to a USB drive, but also when it's locked down, if somebody opens up a link or attachment by mistake, that program can't run. Now, Threat Locker are working on Macs, but they haven't got there yet. So those are some of the things that are more prevalent for Windows-based environment. Plus, there's a lot more programs that are out there for Windows, and sometimes the ones that you can get to work on Mac don't work as efficiently.
Wonderful, super insightful. So I know that for a lot of businesses, there's more of a strategy when it comes to technology, especially as we have some blended working from home, working in person. How can people, if they have follow-up questions, reach out to you, Roland, and your team?
Great. If you want to get hold of us, give us a call at 281-647-9977 or reach us on the web, impresscomputers.tech. That's IMPRESS, computers.tech. And the best thing to do is sit down with us before you start making the mistake of purchasing the wrong hardware. We'll sit down with you, we'll give you advice and say, this is going to be best for your environment, not just for today, but what's going to happen over the next 5 years, so you don't make those expensive hardware mistakes.
Wonderful. Really appreciate you coming on and just sharing that wisdom with the audience. Remember, folks, if you'd like to be a guest, feel free to reach out to me. You can hit me on the email, sherman.on@hgfin.net. This is Biz Talk with Sherman. I'm your host, Sherman On from Hoteling Insurance Services. Have a great day, folks. Sherman's out.